Welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed your hour break. Maybe you had some tea, maybe you got some coffee, ate some breakfast, or took a nap. Whatever it is that what game developers do, I don't know. So today, this session is Nizam Karawin, aka Fatal, surviving the solo game dev journey. We know a lot of you are on the solo game dev journey, so I'm excited for this. He's got some a different experience to talk about. So take it away, Nizam.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks a lot. So, hey guys, my name is Nizam Karawan, also known as Fataline. I'm a solo game developer, musician from Johannesburg, South Africa. And this is the solo game developer journey. And yeah, and just to note, I am still on my journey. My game is still coming to Steam. So let's go get into it. So, firstly, I'm gonna just talk about in general how I started. So these are my current game marketing images. So as you can see, I've done some exhibitions. I've done a couple of things with my game. So this is proof that even if you're by yourself on the bottom of the continent in Africa, you can still get a global reach. So yeah, all right. So, firstly, my first steps. I'm actually going to start before my college days because I actually started when I was 7 years old. And my journey actually started when I finished God of War on PS2. And that's when I first saw the documentary with Cory Barlog and the developers from Sony Santa Monica, and I was blown away. I just couldn't understand what an awesome job it is to make games. The first thing I did was show my parents and my grandparents that documentary, and I think that that's what kind of set me on the path. Because as soon as my grandfather saw that this is what I want to do and that I'm good at drawing as well, he went and got me a whole bunch of paper, like literally a truckload of paper, and I was drawing every single day. So eventually, I started college 2016 to 2018. I did animation, so I have an advanced diploma in animation, which, if I'm not mistaken, is a degree. There, I learned the basics of art. I learned the basics of game coding. Nothing for audio, nothing for marketing, just animation. Doing designs, 2D, 3D, everything, reading characters. That's what I did. So after college, I went through a phase where I was struggling to get a job, and it was really tough for me at first. And as soon as I realized that it's gonna be a full year that I don't have a job, I started creating the first prototype for Staring Time. And the reason why I actually created the prototype was because of a platform called Summer.io, which held their first game jam in 2019. And the theme was one input. So this is where the idea for the game came through, because I was like, how do I do one input? And that's why I came up with the concept of staring at clocks, only using the camera to look around, no interaction whatsoever. My game was very minimalistic. There was nothing special about it. I did that demo in like 2 days, I think. And yeah, so from that time, I started my journey with Staring Time. I managed to get a couple of things moving forward, like uh, being part of Comic Con Africa's Springbok project, which allowed game developers from South Africa to exhibit at Comic Con in Johannesburg, which really opened the network gates up for me. I met professionals, I met people that dealt with business in outside of Africa. It just forced me to recognize myself as a solo developer. And that's when I realized that if I'm going to do this, I have to be determined. So then we go move on to the test of determination, which I consider my difficult year, because that's the year that I had to really struggle. I was still looking for a job, still trying to push Staring Time. It was very difficult. So after my difficult years, I managed to find help. I went, I researched, I sent emails, everything, found my mentors, eventually expanded my network, and here I am from 2024 up to today, building the final game for Staring Time. So 3 years of animation and game design. So with animation and game design, why I'm talking about this is because I feel with solo game development, the three things that you need to master, or at least master one of them, it's art, audio, and software. If you can at least become an expert in one of these three things, you can at least compensate your skills elsewhere. If you are really good at art, you can make really good levels. You can get someone to help you with the software, or you can have basic software and then move forward. So with animation, definitely 3 years of this, and what you're looking at now is some of my work from college, 2016 to 2018. I'm not very proud of it, but I passed, so that's a good plus for me. Next, game design in C Sharp. So this is what I learned in college as well. As you can see, these are school projects. None of these are from my personal stuff. These are all from my showreel on YouTube, everything, when I was trying to get a job. And right on the corner, the bottom corner, is my very first game that I made in 2016. I made this game with very basic materials. I even downloaded assets. It was the most fun I've had because I just discovered Unity. I was literally like seeing the heavens fall to the earth when I was making this game. Then I realized that it's not as easy as it seems. So, the first prototype of my first small game. As I said, I started with a game jam of summer.io. The theme was one input, and I'm a horror lover. I was like, we're gonna make this a psychological horror game. I was determined to make it a psychological horror game. I remember very clearly um, starting the game jam and thinking for like 15 hours. I wouldn't say wasted, but 15 hours I sat and I was like coming up with ideas. How am I going to make it a psychological horror? What is the one input going to be? And eventually I came up with the concept of no movement, only moving the camera around the room as if you were in a sleep paralysis. So that's where I came up with the concept of okay, sleep paralysis, no movement. Okay, we can put that together into tied together with psychological horror. And with that, I was like, let's add a monster. So I used a very basic monster script. And if you can look at the screenshot that I have here, this is the very first version I have of Staring Time. And the monster is actually in the corner there. And what used to happen is that he used to come slower to you, very slowly. And so this whole point is that you have to start with a minimalist design. Don't think about what you want the game to feel like yet. Just focus on what is the main input, what is the main objection for the player. In this case, it would have been the monster. And what is the main dynamic or concept that is going to tie everything together. So with me, it was sleep paralysis and the clock staring. So as I also mentioned, that it's a very short time, 5 minutes, and one room. So very minimalist. No time to make a big game. Start with a game jam, very similar to this. Doesn't have to be one input, maybe one, two, three inputs, but start with very simple basics. All right. And then we're going to move on to the developing of skills. So, audio and software. For me, I've always been an artist. My whole life, from the time I was like 5, 6 years old, I've been drawing. I got to a point where I mastered drawing. In college, we would literally go out to a park and sketch people in 15 seconds to try and get the most accurate like figure and pose without them knowing. And sometimes we would have exercises where we would try to draw each other like very quickly in like less than 15 seconds. So I've been an artist. Learning software for me was the most difficult like skill for me to learn. From the time I was introduced to Unity in college, it was so difficult. Audio, on the other hand, I've been a musician since I was a teenager. So music wasn't really new to me. I knew a couple of concepts. I kind of understood how to make beats, tempo, timing. But one thing that I was really good at is lyrics, songwriting. So what I would do when I was a teenager, I would write songs and get people to make beats for them, or take people's beats and then write a song for it. And that's how I developed my skills in audio. Now, after college, what I had to do to get to a point where I am now, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of research, a lot of tutorials, a lot of failing, a lot of asking people, a lot of making friends of people that are pros with this kind of stuff. So the images that you are seeing right now is from after I finished college in 2018. In the software side, you'll see a couple of projects that I used to have when I was prototyping after I made Staring Time. So after the demo for Staring Time, I actually abandoned the project because for me it was like it's a small game, it's my first small game. Let me move on. Let me make something better. However, life didn't work out that way for me. So what happened was my computer completely broke down. So everything that you're seeing here, besides my audio stuff, everything you're seeing on the software side is projects that I do not have anymore. My my data left. It was heartbreaking. And this stuff happened between 2020 and 2021. Hence why I call that year my dark year, because I was lost. I didn't have enough money to get a new computer. I didn't have like a computer to do stuff. I didn't have a job. I couldn't update my CV because I didn't have a computer. My family was taking care of me. It was just a disaster. So, software was the hardest thing I had to learn because of the extra stuff that just came with trying to learn something that you don't know at all. So, we're going to start with the overview of the challenges of learning new skills, particularly in audio and software. So, with audio, we're going to discuss ear training, what it takes to make sure that your ears are synchronized, making sure that you are hearing the sounds correctly, identifying different frequencies as well, and learning how to mix because let's face it, if you have audio, you can make your own sounds, you can record your own sounds, you can do a lot if you understand the basics of audio. When I actually started learning how to mix, it took me almost 2 years. This is after me learning how to make music, firstly. And this is coming from someone that used to write songs. I wrote lyrics. I wasn't a producer. So this was also new for me, but it was very artsy, technical as well, but more artsy for me. So it became more of a, how can I say, second nature. And now I'm actually quite confident in my audio design. I believe I could do it professionally, and even in my trailers and in my current videos of my game, I get a lot of compliments for my audio, which I'm very happy for. And we're going to discuss music production, how to implement in-game audio, the techniques used to building atmosphere, and general audio dynamics. And for the software side, we're going to talk about reading code, building systems, researching solutions, learning through failure, which I feel is very important, especially in software, and managing the systems that you build. All right, so let's get going. So, audio, ear training. All right, so with my experience with first learning audio production, one of the first things that I've done was these tests. So you have these kind of audio tests that you can do So sometimes our minds trick us, and our ears can also trick us. So in order for audio training, for ear training, sorry, you're gonna have to test the hearing in both of your ears. And this for me at first was kind of tough because when I started this, I had very dirty ears. So I had to first realize that, wow, my left ear is actually learning, hearing less than my right ear. So I had to clean this ear. Literally, I had to clean it. And so once I did that, I could hear properly in both ears. And the way that you can do this is to close one ear and then try and hear from the other side, and close the other side, then try and hear from this side. Or the best way is to use headphones. Use headphones or earphones. Listen on one side for 5 seconds or less than 5 seconds, and then quickly switch so that you can try and compare volume, density, frequency as well of what you're trying to hear. That's why I say very short tests for accuracy. The reason why very short tests is because when you are doing audio, you have to kind of have a quiet moment. If you are going to be mixing a song or a video game sound effect for like 10 minutes straight, eventually your ears are going to get used to those frequencies and you're going to start not hearing them as accurately as you used to. So, one thing I've learned that's very helpful when you're doing audio production is to do short tests, 2 to 3 minutes. Don't listen to the entire section or the entire recording all in one go all the time. Split it up into sections. Understand the dynamics of each part of your song or your sound effect. Make sure that there's enough sub information, there's enough low mids. Make sure that there's enough high end coming through. If you can balance that out very well with short tests, you become a very good audio person. So yes, sub and low end tests you have to do with headphones. Guys, I made this mistake for so long. And once I got headphones, it helped me so much, especially with my game, making my demo better. Like the improvements, there was literally a point where with staring time, my speakers blew up. So my family got me new speakers, and that was for my birthday present. And when I was mixing on these speakers, it took me a long time to realize that they actually boost the high end from 8K to 12K. So when I was listening to it for the first time on headphones, the sub was too much and the high end wasn't coming through, even though it was boosting on those speakers. And the reason why I wasn't getting sub is because the speakers that I had was not capable of translating that sub information like correctly or accurately. Whereas my previous speakers, I had a literal subwoofer, so I could feel it. But once I started doing these tests with my headphones, it became so much clearer that all I had to do was lower the sub bass, and then everything started coming through correctly. And the only way that you can actually identify the different frequencies is to listen to a lot of sound. Unfortunately, this is a time consuming process. It took me close to 3 years from scratch, guys, to learn how to identify sound frequencies. In my case, I was learning in terms of music production, especially with electric guitars, because I love death metal. I'm a death metal fan. I love all kinds of music, but with death metal, it's the one for me. So when I was writing songs with guitars and bass guitars, I even had some of my musician friends come through and send me some of their recordings so that I can try and mix it or listen to it. I would find that as I was practicing and practicing, I'm starting to hear different things in the recordings because I'm able to identify the frequencies. You'll start hearing popping. You'll start hearing like inconsistencies, you'll start identifying which section of the frequency that you need to lower or you need to increase. Even dynamics such as using filters, or um, there's something called high pass and low pass. Those filter out. You learn how to do those things. And again, listening to a lot of sound. But again, you are not just making audio, you're also making a game. So when you are learning audio, make sure that you watch and play with your ears. And again, I would recommend you do this with headphones, because with the 3D audio, like, you can't beat that on a speaker. And I'm a person, I don't like wearing headphones. I work in a call center. I have to wear like these cheap ass headphones all day, and I don't like it. So when I'm working on my game, the last thing I want to do is put on headphones. But I'm not gonna lie, guys, it helps so much. And one thing that I've learned to do when watching and playing with your ears is to try and walk through the level in any game. I did this with Resident Evil 7, and I got jump scared really bad. So play or try to walk through the level with your eyes closed, so that you enhance the experience. You are immersed in your ears. That way you can hear where are the cues happening. What did these devs decide to use? How did they plan to implement the audio? Where am I hearing the audio? How natural does it sound? All of these things are stuff that you can hear. For example, when I was playing Resident Evil 7, I realized that a lot of the jump scares or the hard knocks that you hear in the first section of the house, especially when you're walking through the kitchen area, there's like hard knocks that happen to jump scare you. Those hard knocks might sound like they far, but in order for it to feel like a jump scare, you kind of have to bring it closer to the player's point of view, so that it scares the player, it instantly hits you. Because in real life, if I am downstairs and I hear someone knock something upstairs, it's not going to sound as loud. That's in real life. So that's why I recommend watch and play with your ears. Audio definitely will improve if you practice this with your favorite games as well. I done this with Doom as well, but I died a lot. And practice by recreating scenes and sounds. So I did this as well. I tried to recreate some sounds with Resident Evil. Um, I tried to recreate some sounds from like Godzilla. There's actually a video online about how they've done the T Rex in the Jurassic Park movies. They used a whole bunch of audio samples, lion roar. They used like distortion. They used a whole bunch of stuff to make it sound like that. And obviously, you're gonna have to watch docs and tutorials as much as you can. Unfortunately, with audio, the more you practice, the better. So as soon as you watch a documentary or a tutorial, try it as soon as you can while it's fresh in your mind, so that when you are working on your game, it becomes second nature. All right, so with audio, learning how to mix, the basics of audio production. Guys, if you learn the basics of audio production, I'm not even lying to you, you will be able to make your levels feel so much more immersive. They will become super super immersive experiences. And you learn the basics of audio production by practicing them. Understand the concepts of panning, understand what is compression, understand what is distortion. These are just the basics that can do so much. And with audio, what I've learned from my professional sound engineering friends is that the less that you do, the better it sounds. I know it sounds weird, but the less effects or the less changes you make to the audio, the better it will sound. Which is why I'm going now to recording and processing. With recording and processing for your game, guys, I use this phone. This is a Samsung Galaxy S20, I think. It's a 5-year-old phone. And I've used this microphone to record all the audio in my game, every single one. And I've processed it inside FL Studio. It's not impossible, guys. Yes, it takes a couple of times for you to get the recording right. But like the ticking sound of my clock, which is the main sound, it's in my trailer. It's like the main marketing part of steering time of my game. I did that sound by clicking a pen, you know those pens that have the click, tick, tick, and by knocking a piece of plastic in my bathtub on tempo, like go, 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 go. I used those two layers and put them together, added a bit of effects, not too much, and that's my clock sound. And if you've played my game, you'll know that there's different speeds for the sound to identify the different types of clocks. And the way I done that, quite simply, I recorded it once, I processed it. Next thing I did was just change the tempo or the speed. And there I've got three different audios, which is the same audio, but because it's sped up a bit, or one is added a little bit more compression, I've got a clock sound for my game that is unique, that's made by me. I have the raw recording on my phone if I ever need to go back, start the process from over. And from recording and processing, I'm going to go into mixing for music, because mixing for music and mixing for sound effects is very different. Mixing for music, you have to understand like the context of the song, the meaning of the song. What experience are you trying to bring the player or the listener to experience? Do you want them to feel sad? Do you want them to feel, you know, positive about themselves? Do you want them to feel like they can take on the world? Because tempo, um, types of frequencies that you use, types of instruments, all play a role in this. And with music, me, as I said, it was metal, death metal. That's what I used to practice. But I have tried to make dubstep and electronic music, not successful. But I would recommend mixing for music. You will also have to write for music. So if you're not a songwriter, there's a lot of stuff online that you can find to practice mixing for music. Because once you are done, or once you have a trailer for your game, guys, it's important for you to have that knowledge to make a song. I can't explain to you how good it feels when you get a song right for a specific level or a specific theme in your game, and it just fits. It's the most satisfying experience ever. But again, like guys, this takes practice. It took me a long time. Now let's move forward to effects for games. So effects for games need to be very minimal. You need to make sure you have the most clear raw recording. Make sure you have an understanding of your microphone. It took me a while to understand how to record with this microphone, the limitations it has. I also have another microphone which I use to do vocal recording, but I haven't really used that for my game yet. But anyway, the next thing is stereo separation. Understanding stereo separation. If you look on this diagram that I have here, it's got the panning, far left, far right, center. That is basically in metal, that's how we mix. Far right, far left, center. Guitars, bass, drums, right? So everything center is basically mono. Once you understand stereo separation, it will really help you to identifying which areas or parts of your levels need more attention with in terms of audio. The reason why is because it took me a long time to get the distance for my clock in my game, because you have to stand at a distance and you also have to stare at the clock at a distance as well. So you need to hear the clock from far to finally locate it. And once you get to the clock, it starts to change. It starts to, when you're moving, it's behind you. If you're looking at it, it's in front of you. So what's understanding stereo separation, definitely understand what elements need to be in mono and what elements need to be in stereo separation. Mostly stuff with reverb, it will cancel out mono. You cannot really put it in mono. If you put stuff with reverb in mono, you're going to lose that reverb information. So understand stereo separation because it's very important to understanding the rest of the elements of learning mixing audio. Next, distortion and compression. Understand how to compress correctly and distort. For example, I just took a recording of my voice. I could be just saying something normal. And if I add a correct distortion to that, I can use that as a monster scream or a monster attack sound, you know, even with a gun. If you just take a tap, if you tap on the table and you get that recording right, if you layer that one recording on top of each other, you add distortion on one recording, one version of it, and then you add compression to the next one, you'll create a layer that will eventually make it sound like it's a gun. And you'll have a gun sound. I took a snare sample and I added distortion, I added a bunch of compression, and then I used the in-game, in-engine reverb to make it sound like a gun, and it worked. And then again, guys, practice, practice, practice audio. You have to practice it. Unfortunately, in this case, if you are making your game, make stuff to practice with. It will make it better. All right. So music production. This is quite a short one. We're not going to dwell too long on this one. So we're starting with simple instruments. Don't be like me, guys. I started with electric guitars and drums that have double kicks and stuff like that for metal. I wish I could go back and start with like very simple acoustic guitars, trying out pianos or even synthesizers, because they are way easier to mix than electric guitars for death metal. It's so complicated. I had to go on another journey just to learn how to mix death metal tracks. But that's another story for another day. Understanding melody and rhythm. Guys, rhythm and rhyme, you have to have a conclusion, introduction, a body, and a conclusion to your song. Add elements that would make the player or the listener understand what journey you're taking them on. If you're gonna use odd time signatures, make sure that they are aligned to rhyme and make sure that your odd time signatures are aligned with the tempo. The reason why is because, especially in death metal, there's a lot of progressiveness that happen. So the tempo won't change, but because the drummer is now doing a blast beat, which is literally hitting this fast, you might think that it's increased, but no, you have to make sure that the listener understands the rhythm so that they understand the journey you're taking them on. And this is where we come to understanding genre elements. As I mentioned, with death metal, there's a lot of progressive elements. It took me a long time to understand that things change. There's things like blast beats, there's ghost notes, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And even if you study the genre of death metal, for example, you can trace a lot of these practices or techniques back to jazz and fusion punk, even. So, if you are making, for example, a children's game, make the soundtrack maybe a popish song or a country song, you know? It all depends on the genre of your game as well. So, understanding your game genre and what music you want to represent that genre. The best example, Doom. Guys, the best example. Understand your genre elements, both for the game and for the music. The music needs to enhance the game experience, not the other way around. So, lyrics and songwriting. This one, not so much like, not so much important. Like in the case of like soundtracks for credits or maybe story elements, definitely add lyrics and songwriting. It will enhance the story of your game. But in the context of games as well, make sure that each of your songs, if you do have lyrics and songwriting, it ties into the story somehow. Make sure that your lyrics and songwriting tells a story just as much as walking through your level and experiencing the environment tells a story. Instrumentation groups, understanding which instruments work well together. Like you can experiment, try synthesizers with pianos, they work really well. Guitars and maybe trumpets, I'm not so sure, not so well. Maybe for jazz, yes, that can work as well. So make sure you understand your instrumentation groups. Understand how many percussions does my drum kit need? How many percussions am I going to actually use in this particular track? Does this song actually need bongos? You know, so grouping your instruments per your message that you're trying to get across with the context within your game as well. So make sure that the instruments that you choose fit well with each other. They don't clash, meaning that the frequencies can flow into one another. Because once you have different instrumentation groups, it all depends on how you manage your frequencies in the mixing process. Next, produce different music, guys. Test out different music. It took me a long time to learn how to make death metal. I've been listening to it my whole life. I can do hip hop as well. I can do electro funk, not so good, but I tried. So learning different music styles will definitely enhance you. It will help you get to your get to the level of expertise that you need in terms of practicing. And music and level per scene. Make sure that each scene that you have in your game enhances is enhanced by the music per scene. You don't want the player to hear the same song over and over again. When they walk and they see a lake, they're coming out of the forest. The forest should have the rustling trees and maybe an acoustic soundtrack. As soon as the lake is approaching, add a synthesizer to amplify that exaggeration so that the player feels like, wow, I'm really encountering an event here. There's something happening now. That is how you can manage your music per scene. And also, atmosphere, soundtracks for scenes, very important. So make sure that music per scene is according to the emotion and the story that you're trying to tell. All right, so in-game audio, guys, use natural sounds. Record as much as you can with natural techniques, no compression. And the way that you do this, it's very difficult to do this, by the way, is to just record when you have the time. For example, when I was trying to record wind from the outside, yes, it's very difficult. There was birds chirping a lot, and in my game, I didn't want that the birds chirping because the wind is supposed to be you're supposed to be in an isolated area where there's no life. So it was tough for me to get that. I had to record a couple of times, and the wind is hitting against the microphone, and it was just not sounding right. So what I ended up doing, I ended up creating like a little cardboard, and I just put it over my phone so that the wind could just flow, not like right against the mic, but I ended up catching the correct recording type of recording I wanted. And the reason why your game is going to sound really good is because you record from real life. You can use samples as well. If your game is more artsy, if it's more fantasy, using recordings from real life will enhance the audio. Minimize the effects, guys. Minimize the compression and distortion when you're using in-game audio so that when the person is using headphones or even listening from a stereo speaker and that 3D sound takes into effect, sometimes there's a lot of issues that can happen with distortion. If you turn your head in the game and then it sounds like it's behind you, it might even delay and cause issues on the one side of the speaker. So be careful with that. 3D spatial orientation, as I was mentioning, make sure that your audio is correctly allocated to the 3D space of where you want your audience to be at the time. If I'm looking left, I should be hearing the audio on my right. If I'm looking this way, I should be hearing it that way. If I turn around completely, it should be behind me, which in terms of stereo separation, if it goes behind you, it's technically in both speakers, just really panned right behind. User feedback sound. Get people to hear your sounds, guys. Get people to rate your sounds. Get people to understand exactly what are you doing, um, exactly what are you trying to do, what you want them to experience, and use loopable exports, because you can't have six different audio recordings, like just randomizing. Well, you can, but they need to each loop into and with one another, so that when the player is playing the game, the wind sound doesn't just stop. It has to blend in with each other, and that comes with software. So let's go to engine implementation. Make sure that when you are implementing your audio, you have the correct export. MP3, WAV file, make sure the engine you're using supports these. Unity, well, in my case, I have a mix of both WAV files and MP3. I find that MP3s work well for my game. That's what works for me. So definitely engine implementation, make sure that the exporting is done correctly. Check tethering when you are exporting, and also the length of and the size as well will take into effect as well. Audio building atmosphere. Use natural sounds. Add layers with subtlety. Make sure that if there's water flowing, that you have different types of water. If there's birds, wind, trees, everything needs to flow together. And again, you need to experience these things by walking in nature. No or limited compression. Blend multiple recordings to with a randomized playlist, and have scene specific audio. And another important thing, player input sounds. Player input sounds. All right, so I'm gonna rush a bit because I see I've been spending a lot of time on audio. So with audio dynamics, you have to prioritize the audio volume. The audio volume that you export it in, make sure that it is normalized. A lot of times with Unity, it does not like normalized audio, in my case at least. So what I've been doing is I've been exporting it to be just below the threshold, and then if it needs to be louder, I just manage that in the engine. Effects versus music versus voices. You want to make sure that there's dynamics between your sound effects, your music, and your voices. If the voice in a lot of racing games where there's radio, especially in GTA, if there's a radio person that comes on to announce the next song, the current song that's playing actually the volume lowers, and the sound effects actually also kind of lowers in a bit, so that you hear that the voice. So definitely pay attention to which effects are being prioritized for the player experience. Camera position. Make sure that your audio is placed with the camera position. Static versus dynamic audio. Is my object moving? Is it not moving? If it's not moving, like for example, my clock, it stays still on the wall. It's not moving. If I move around, then the audio should change based on my position. If I stand still and the object is moving closer to me, that volume should increase. Triggers and events. You want to make sure that when you have a trigger, if there's a cutscene that plays, have a sound effect cue. If it could even be a bell, it could even be a notification. If your gun needs to be reloaded, that sound, it's so important. You'll be surprised at how much improvement these little things do. Cutscenes and in-game. Make sure that you amplify for cutscenes and in-game, especially for stories. Make sure you amplify the experience in the audio space, so that the player understands that, okay, I'm moving from an in-game moment to a cutscene, or from a cutscene to the in-game. All right, so let's move forward. I'm going to go a bit quicker. So software, how to become a coder. Hello world, start with the basics. Start with the basics, practice, learn from tutorials. Build your own version of what you learned from the tutorials, guys. This is what took me a really long time, because I'm not a coding person. I'm actually an artist. I became a coder you know. So build your own version. When I first wrote my AI for in college, I rewrote it like 7 times on my own with different research. And then I built a custom version of it to accommodate different things like range, um, even giving timer so that if it doesn't find the player in a certain time frame, then it will spawn closer to the player, stuff like that. Read professionals code. Even if you don't understand, read the code for the pros. It will help. And practice, 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 guys. All right, researching solutions. When you're researching solutions for software, please understand your context. You need to understand that when you are researching for software, guys, it's going to take a long time for you to get the correct solution that will best fit your project. You'll most likely come across 5 different solutions, and you'll have to like test each of them, to find out which one works best for your project. For me, it was difficult to make my first person controller work properly. I was building it from scratch. Eventually, I realized that, you know what, I don't like using the normal first person controller. I want to use a rigid body controller in Unity. So I had to learn how to build a first person controller with physics. It was tough. The stairs killed me and slopes killed me. It was tough learning how to do those Euler angles and the detections. It killed me. This is why I'm getting to multiple solutions. It took me multiple times to get to this point to understand that I need to test multiple things, see which one works, and then like kind of stress test it and see which one is actually better for the experience. This is where I come with using a test environment. For example, I had a backup version of my game. As I mentioned, my game was actually abandoned. So I had a backup version of my game when I eventually got my new computer. And when I would um, find that I need to get a solution, I would then just test it in that environment so that basically, if my game breaks, it's not the main project. It's just a backup one. And I even had a backup for the backup. So use a test environment so that you don't break your main project, and document what works, guys. Please, if you are coming up finding different solutions and you testing things, document it. It will help you so much. This was a huge mistake that held me back for years and weeks. Document your stuff, note down what works, what you tried, as much detail as possible. It's a lot of admin, and date and time as well, because sometimes you'll be like, I wrote this code, I wrote a different version here. Which one is the most updated one? It happens. Back up your old code so that you will always have a foundation to fall back upon. This is something that really has helped me in my journey, because when my game eventually broke, I didn't have anyone to really help me other than my old code, and also a pro. I have software developer friends that are really helpful. They work in different areas of technology. And when I ask them to take a look at my code, they always come back with a good solution. And people who are willing to help you guys, they will not put you down. If you ask someone for help and they're telling you that you're not going to do it, don't ask them for help again. Get someone who is willing to help. All right, so it is already 50 minutes, but I'm going to move on. Just keep going. So focus on the main output when you're building your systems. Don't focus on too much features. Focus on the main output. What are you trying to bring this current system to deliver? Build the foundation. Build your code on a foundation so that you always have a strong foundation when you need to add new features. Test early and test often, guys. Test your code as often and early as possible, please. I once had an issue where I was rushing for an exhibition and I was rushing for an updated version of my game. When they played my game, it wasn't working. It was like halfway. I had to cut the demo in half and tell them at a certain point that, okay, this is the end of the demo, when it wasn't, because after that, the game would break. Develop and follow pipeline. Create a pipeline for yourself. yes, there's a standardized pipeline for game development, but not every project needs to follow that pipeline. My uh, way I like to work is to start with art and start with a story. Then I move into game mechanics. How can I turn this into a game? So definitely don't be feel forced to start to create or follow a standardized pipeline. Sometimes you can create your own process. Try multiple methods. Trying multiple methods will really help you with understanding where's my game's limitations, where am I getting wrong. And you can try this by using others' formula. You know, if you have one way of doing something, you ask someone he has another way of doing something, you'll never know. That person's way of doing it might benefit your game. There might be a way that that code is written that if you implement it correctly into your system, it will actually fit. And don't focus too much on optimization. This is also a mistake that I made, especially when I started learning URP. I was so excited with my textures that I was taking photos, textures I was taking with my phone. Um, and eventually I got to a point where I was like, look, this quality optimization thing, I need to come back to it. So I ended up just lowering the resolution of my textures, working on my game, and now I'm at the point where I'm getting to optimization for Steam. Don't dig holes in the foundation. Guys, you want to make sure your foundation is concrete. So make sure that when you are building your foundation, it's concrete. When you are building new features, you are not digging holes into your foundation. And by this I mean, if you have a AI, for example, that follows the player at a certain interval or time, and now you want to add a system that now maybe allows the AI to detect the player faster, but now you have to now go into the system for the time to now add more into that particular section of the code. You are digging a hole in your foundation. Make sure your foundation is solid, that you build upon it, that you don't dig a hole. And you don't dig a hole by keeping the core functions working. Keep the core functions working by making sure that when you build your code, you test it, then making sure that it works like it used to. A lot of times you'll change one line of code, then it doesn't want to work. That happens. Fix major bugs first. Don't worry about these small little things like animation bugs or timing bugs. Fix the major ones first. By major ones, I mean game breaking. Make sure that your game is still playable before you go into adding more features and all of these things. Understand what is my limitations, scope and expansion. Again, understanding your limitations will allow you to get the scope and expansion. Debugging for performance. Guys, this is also something I'm still learning. And this is a process on its own that takes a really long time. So you have to make sure that your game is at a certain point where you are able to play from the beginning of the level to the end of the level and document the bugs as well. So you need to be able to debug from the beginning to the end. Make sure that you do this by stress testing your mechanics. Again, in a test environment, stress testing, for example, if you have a horde AI system, put 1,000 AI, see what will break. Stress test is meant for you to break your game, to see the limitations and where you can push your game. Optimization and cleanup. This is for mostly release. I'm also still learning this. So when you are doing this, you will basically go through your code, look at what can be improved, what does not need to be improved. That's basically that. But as I said, I'm still learning what does. So yeah, let's go to the test of determination. So guys, keeping motivated as a solo game developer is very difficult. I did not have a job. My family was keeping me alive for like 4 years. As I'm sitting here today, I've got a job. It's a learnership actually at a call center. Not ideal, but I'm getting paid. I'm good. I can work on my game. Keeping motivated is the hardest thing. You have to keep motivated. Make sure that whatever obstacles you have, you climb, you do not give up. make peace with your limitations. It took me a long time to understand that in order for me to learn audio correctly, in order for me to learn software correctly to make the game, I have to put in the time and the effort. And I can say that I have done it. I'm here now, and it's because I made peace with my limitations. Be supportive to get support, guys. Make sure that whoever is supporting you, you support. If you want support, go out and reach out to other game developers, support them, like their stuff, retweet, repost, comment on their things. You'll be surprised by who will give you the best support by just you doing that small interaction with them. Ask help from people who will help. Again, guys, if somebody is going to tell you like this is not going to work, or there's a difference if they are giving you good advice or if they're just putting you down. So make sure that if you ask help from someone, it's someone who is willing to help. Take small steps first and take step by step each day, each session that you have with yourself. I only have 2 hours at a time when I get home. Like, I was only home for about 2 hours now before this presentation. And even now, I've only got 2 hours to work on my game. If you do that, you'll make small milestones that can be done weekly. 2 hours times five, that's at least maybe 10 hours a week that you get. So give yourself that week for a milestone. Don't beat yourself up too much. Break through the comfort zone, guys. Break the pattern. Take the risks. Don't be afraid. Old habits, throw them out the window. Fail in front of others. Don't be afraid to fail. Make friends with experts. Don't try to fit in just to try and learn from others. Be yourself. Don't be a person who follows the crowd. Be yourself. Showcase what makes you different. And yes, you will feel like you are an imposter. But remember, you are a professional. You are putting in the time and the effort to become a professional. Once you understand that you are the professional in your in with your project, your mindset will change completely. And lastly, collaborate with others. So I'm gonna just run through quite quick because we have a little bit of amount of time. Mentors, make sure that when you are looking for mentors, they are willing to guide you through the process. And make sure that if you get a mentor, that they have done what you are trying to accomplish. And also somebody who understands the genre and the industry. Community, guys, there's a lot of community. Local meetups, befriend pros with different skills, socialize outside of the gaming world. And by that I mean don't only go to events and exhibits. Make friends with people, have fun, share your expertise with others. Um, yeah, so I see that we're running out of time, and I still
Yeah,
have
let's
lots of
let's get a couple questions first here. Let's get a
time.
couple questions. Nizam, that was awesome. Also, there's more questions, so you guys go into the Discord, go into AMA questions in the Discord, and Nizam, if you got some time, that would be awesome if you do that.
No
Right after
problem.
this, right after the stream here. Okay, first question from Jade Chamber Sound. As someone in audio as well, I find it curious that you think it's a core skill to have as a solo dev. It's awesome. Can you elaborate on why you think that?
Oh, yes, definitely. So, in my particular instance, I had a lot of issues with learning audio. And because my game is psychological horror and you have to hear where the clock is in the level to find it, with my experience, the more that I've learned audio, the better my game actually got. And that's when I realized that I didn't actually change any code in my game, I didn't change any art in my game. The next demo I had was just updated audio effects, and people were like, "Whoa, dude, your game now it's like so much better than it was. What did you do?" And I'm like, "I just added some audio." So definitely, if you understand audio, you can do a lot of stuff. You can create immersion. Like audio is, in my opinion, 50% of the experience is sight and audio. If you can capture audio, you've captured 50% of the experience. So that's my opinion for why audio is a core skill for indie games, solo game developers as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Nisam. Remember, go into the Discord right now. Drop some questions for Nisam in there. We have got, who do we have coming up here? We've got Greg Lane. Congrats. You've been signed. Now what? That's what's happening. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Nisam.
Thanks, guys.